Hello everyone, welcome back to Conquest's tier list review, where we improve an old tier list that I had to make it much better by building it from scratch. And today we have the biggest and possibly the strongest match of units. By that I mean that a lot of these units provide attacking power, not much else. So we got Benny, we got Charlotte, we got Keaton, we got Gunter, Shura, Flora, and Izana on the menu today. Yeah, actually we end up spending this entire episode talking about Benny. I'm sorry, the rest will have to wait until next time. They'll be the last Gen 1 units that we'll be discussing before we get into the super interesting discussion about kids, but they'll have to wait one more episode. Who doesn't have to wait is Zoran here with me once again. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to this.
Alright, me too, because I'm looking forward to seeing what you have to say about these units beyond the surface level impressions that I got of these units. I haven't really used a whole lot of them long term. I've used Benny before to just be a bot, and I used Shura before. That's kind of it, so I'm curious how these shape up. So I guess we're good to go then, right?
I think so.
Alright, so Benny, in my solo, I did get Benny, but I was missing a rally strength bot, so what I did is use him a little bit for an armor knight until I had a heart seal to spare for him, then turned into a fighter, promoted him to berserker, gave him rally strength, and that's kind of all he did for the playthrough. So I don't have a great impression of what Benny is. What I do know is that the point where Benny joins is a bit too late for him to be like Effie, where you can get away with a 4-move unit that doesn't double a whole lot, but it has a lot of strength and defense to work with. And it seems to me that no matter how I look at him, you don't really get a whole lot out of using Benny no matter which way you do it. He just has too many areas that needs fixing, mostly his speed and his movement. And all he just has is, when he gets to a place, he takes hits very well, and then he deals hits back, which I guess for the beast killer, fox hunting chapter, that's cool. You can have him beast killer stuff. His personal helps with that. Plus 10 hit on any enemy within 2 spaces. That's something not a lot of units provide besides the Heartseeker units. So that's pretty cool. But other than that, I don't really see a whole lot of reasons to use him. But part of it might be that his base level is so high at 15 that he barely gets any XP. And he just joins at the tail end of an episode where there's not a whole lot of how do I say this? The enemies are weakest compared to your player units at that point. So he misses a area where it's very easy for a lot of units that join earlier to contribute. And instead he joins about right before the game is about to get a lot harder, and he doesn't really help with that in any way. That's my impression of Benny. Anything that I missed?
I do think his best selling point is his personal skill. I really like Fierce Mian. So if you're not aware, the effect is it's the same as Heartseeker. It cuts enemy avoid, but it's only half as powerful, so it reduces by 10 instead of 20. The upside is it works at 1 to 2 range instead of just adjacent enemies only, and it stacks with Heartseeker. So if you need to, you can combine Fierce Mian and Heartseeker, generally from 2 different sources, because probably you're not getting Heartseeker on Benny, and cut enemy avoid by 30 for some of the more avoidant bosses in chapter, for example, chapter 17, chapter 19 as well. And that's cool. So sometimes I find myself thinking I really want to bring Benny on this mission just because he's going to help my accuracy in that way. But I think you're right that it's difficult to give him opportunities to really contribute. Like in his join chapter, as you mentioned, he joins behind everyone. Now, if you let the enemies come to you, he can certainly hold a bridge or something, but it's also very, very possible to do that with other units or fly across the river and clear out a lot of the enemies before he even joins. So it's not like he's really essential for anything in his join map, and it's hard to get him into the action if the rest of the team has already gone ahead. And then, like you said, beyond that, you're getting into parts of the game that are a little bit more challenging. Enemies start to promote. There's lots more mixed weaponry where you'll see mages and physical enemies together. Benny's resistance isn't bad, especially not for an armor knight. It's pretty good, but it's not so good that he's taking on a whole stack of enemy mages all at once and doing really well out of that. It's more like, yeah, he's going to take almost no damage from physical enemies, and if there's a mage or 2 in the mix, he can probably handle it. But unfortunately, he's just not very effective at clearing out enemy groups compared to just about any other kind of tank you might have at that point. lots of characters are just a lot more powerful than him. Camilla's one. Xander basically usurps his entire role because Benny's kind of meant to be the guy with huge defense and nothing else much going for him. But Xander has that and amount and a lot more strength and a lot more speed and an incredible personal skill and natural access to Wyvern Lord and basically every single feature that Benny wishes he has or he could have, Xander already gets in his innate set alone.
Yeah, and while Xander's like borderline able to double things if you want him to, Benny seems. I know he can be made to double because Septi did it as a joke for me once, but it required like a Kinchi Knight or a Falcon Knight reclass and his birthday or something similar like that.
Yeah, it's that's a novelty. It's not really a strategy, I would say.
It's technically possible, but 6 base speed and 50% growth as a knight, and then even if you make him a wyvern somehow with like a core merit, we're still looking at 7 speed and 20% growth at level 15. It's so bad.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you might think wyvern would be great for him, but he's not even really. I'm not sure he's any better than Baruka in that role at all. One really unfortunate thing for Benny is that like you mentioned he starts at a relatively high level. He doesn't have the stats to show for it though. He's got high defense, yes, and his HP is pretty okay for his level, but you really, really wish at least his strength would be a lot better than it is for level 15. So like when you run comparisons between Benny and other units at the same level, you often find that he's a lot farther behind on offensive power than you might expect, even disregarding the whole speed issue.
Oh, I thought his strength of 15 was like decent for his level, I guess, but I don't know who to compare him to because it feels a bit unfair to just compare him to just Camilla and Xander, but I'm guessing he also doesn't really compare well to, say, Silas or maybe.
A lot of that is carried, like, Knight has good base strength too. His personal strength is fairly low for being level 15. But like if you're just looking for you're not looking for a top end unit like Camilla or Xander, but you're just looking for someone to move around and have a lot of defense and take hits and hold down a choke point or something. I think Baruka is going to serve you better than Benny will. She's just a lot more mobile and can do a lot of the same things.
Yeah, you can give Benny mobility with a pair up, but then he's probably lacking for speed because, like, how do you... I guess you can give him, like, a Falcon Knight pair up or something, but even with that, he's still not going to double anything, so it just seems like...
That by itself is not going to...
Yeah. It. So you just never get a mobile Benny that can also actually kill things.
Yeah. He does okay as a pair up bot. Knight is, what? 2 strength and 4 defense, and then general is 3 strength, 5 defense, and that's fine. I wouldn't really say it's better than Wyvern Rider though. Wyvern Rider offers more strength and less defense before promotion, and then after promotion it gets extra speed or extra movement instead of extra defense, which I think is a lot more valuable. So I think if you're really looking for ways for Benny to contribute, it really does have to go with have to do something with his personal skill. And there are places where it's useful, but at the same time, in most of those cases, it's just more practical for you to set yourself up in a way where even if you miss the attack, it's not going to kill you. Like, you can maneuver Benny all the way to the end of Chapter 17. You can move him all the way to the top left corner of Chapter 19 to take on Keaton, for example. And that's totally doable, but I mean, you might as well just have a really bulky unit fight those bosses or have guard gauge set up or something to make sure that they're not going to die even if they miss a hit.
Yeah, not a great reliability booster, and probably more trouble than it's worth even to get into it.
It feels great to have. Like, you love those situations where you're looking at like a 92% hit and you go, oh, I can move Benny here and it's going to be 100% awesome. But that's just less important in practice than you might think it is on paper.
Mm-hmm. Do you think he's hurt by the fact that if an enemy does 0 damage, they don't attack him? Because I feel like that's still abusable enough to where you can still use him.
In a way, I think it helps him because like he's not going to be killing things in one round back anyway. So like yes, objectively, he would see more use in combat and be able to contribute more if enemies actually attacked him more regularly. But I think the things he can do, plugging choke points in Chapter 17, are kind of nice. And I like the fact that he just doesn't take damage and therefore doesn't get attacked if you have him pull the javelin. And I think give him like a very, very modest defense boost.
Plus that is funny. And I guess that's like one really safe way he can provide his personal if you want to kill the enemies behind that choke point.
Yep. It's like, it is actually fairly applicable there because all the enemies are 1 to 2 range units who it's more difficult to apply Heartseeker against.
Yeah.
You also mentioned the Beast Killer thing in Chapter 19. And yeah, that's totally doable, but it's going to be the same situation as Xander, really, where if you're not careful, he's not going to take damage from enemies. And I think that is a real drag there, where not only is he not taking damage, but he doesn't even have the mobility that Xander does. So he's trudging through the woods with his 5 movement in general reduced by the terrain. And it just takes him forever to do things there. He also can't stand on mountain tiles, which isn't that important from a defensive perspective for him, but just it's an extra constraint on his mobility that most other characters don't have when he's in armor. So yeah, I don't love it.
Just icing on the cake, but the reverse.
Yeah.
That sounds like a C tier unit to me. I would still be more comfortable having Benny long term than either Nyx or Perry probably, but I don't know if that says everything about him. Because it sounds like in practice at least you can sometimes squeeze uses out of Perry and Nyx with like shelter for Perry, and I don't know about Nyx.
Yeah.
Nyx probably has about the same utility as Benny in an efficient playthrough.
Yeah, I would say he's close to Perry, maybe a little behind.
I can live with that. I'll throw him in between. He's alright. At least I'm assuming that you were done summing up Benny. There's not a whole lot to say about him beyond this, I guess, because he doesn't have much reclass options besides. Like,
yeah, I mean,
rally.
the poor guy gets fighter from Heartseal, fighter from Keaton, and it's fighter from Arthur as well.
Yeah, and he can get a fast support with Charlotte for
fighter. Hooray!
Why? Poor guy. They screwed him over. Maybe Charlotte's more exciting because
maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I like her growth a lot. She really screams like offensive. I want to say glass cannon, but her HP is so high. I don't know if I want to call her that, but she does seem offensively capable of contributing. We've discussed a lot that units that have mostly good combat at 1 range don't tend to be the greatest at enemy phase combat late game because there are so many enemies that you want to counter at 2 range, and there's the enemies that the players that do have good 1-2 range are so much better at it that it feels kind of bad to use a unit that's so good at killing things but only at 1 range. So that's like a severe limitation on her. And I usually just end up using Charlotte as a parrot bot. She can promote, I think, at base level, if not like 1 level, and then just become a berserker to either give a bunch of strength and speed to someone or provide rally strength like I did with Benny. Just get level 1 berserker to level 5 is not very difficult. I think with my playthrough with Gwimbage, we just used the paralog to do it. It was done in 1 sitting of just doing Sophie's paralog and getting kills there, and then you're done. That's probably the easiest and most efficient way to use Charlotte, but it looks like she has potential as like, you could just throw at 1 enemy and they'll be dead at the end of the turn, because the options you have with unit with this strength growth and this speed growth and all the other like funny things about Berserker, like being able to reach S rank axes and having a crit bonus and all that, they seem really good. And also I've heard legends of Shura being reclassable to Maid and actually having 1-2 range that way, and with her strength maybe she can make that work, but I've never heard anyone back this up. It's just a fun fact I've heard, so I'm curious what you think of those options as well. I've never used her long term though as a unit.
Yeah, Charlotte's an interesting one. I know it's been said, I couldn't tell you by who, but I've seen this in multiple different places, that Charlotte is the closest thing this game has to an Est. Which I guess if you look at the situation, she's like one of the last unpromoted first-gen units to join, and she's level 10 when she starts, so she is underleveled, and actually starts like Benny behind the front lines in her join map. She does give you a little bit of that experience where like for her level, her stats are perfectly fine, but she is behind the curve to start, and she actually does have pretty good growths, at least offensively. And yeah, she does have some interesting class paths to work with because she starts in fighter, and I do think that is the best thing she should be doing. Just use what fighter does, which is mainly pair up bonuses and rally strength. She does really well at that. She has great personal pair up bonuses to stack on top of the berserker pair up bonuses. At S rank, she gives an extra 3 strength and 2 speed, which is excellent. And I think that's the easiest thing to do. It doesn't require a lot of attention, and it makes her a pretty valuable part of the team. In the same way that Arthur is valuable, except she's a little bit more optimized in terms of pair up support, but she's also joining later and has a different pool of support partners to work with. One kind of cool thing is that, like Selena, Charlotte is one of the few first-gen women who don't have Wyvern access naturally, but do get friendship with a Wyvern rider, and therefore can get it with a friendship seal, because Charlotte supports Baruka. So you can have, build that friendship and take Charlotte into the Wyvern path. She's a lot worse at that than Selena is, though, for a couple reasons. One is she joins later and gets the support started later and doesn't have a fast support with Baruka, so it takes 5 maps, including Chapter 13, to make that happen. And while Charlotte does have good strength and speed, and very good HP, actually, especially with HP plus 5 factored in, her defenses are really bad. Like, her physical defense is fairly weak, and her resistance is miserable. So, as a Wyvern rider / Wyvern Lord, Charlotte is going all in on offense, and doesn't really have the bulk to do things that you might want a character like that to do in places like Chapter 17 or Chapter 19. So she's a lot more limited in that respect. Because she starts with an axe rank, it is a lot more feasible to get her to, for example, to wield the Brave Axe later on, which is very fun. But she's not better at that than, say, Camilla.
Of course not.
But Wyvern is an option. It's cool. It gives her, like, an extra power boost with strength plus 2 and lunge and other features like that. And then you mentioned the maid option as well. That's yes, she does have HP, she does have strength, she does have speed. She can pull that off. Don't go to Troubadour before you promote, though. And if you're going to do that, you want to get some levels. You don't want to be an instant promoted 10-1 maid. Like that's not going to work. So you're going to want to do some training in fighter to like level 15, level 17, maybe level 19.
To just take advantage of her growths and not to not have the Nick situation.
I think it's actually true for just about anything you want to do with Charlotte, that it's going to be more helpful than you might expect to give her at least a few levels before you promote. Since she starts at level
doing
10,
combat, right? Not as a parabot / marriage bot / rally bot.
I mean, even if you are a parabot bot or a rally bot, like she can promote at level 10. But what I found with some experimentation is it's actually very helpful to get her to about level 13 first, because it's not hard to do. She's under-leveled, so she gets a lot of XP from kills, so you can just feed her like 10 or so kills total over the next couple of maps. Just to get her a few more points in some of the key stats, like strength and speed. So promoting at level 13 instead of level 10 really only raises her internal level by 1. But it makes her a lot more capable of just helping out if you need to. Like if you're going to switch and have her take a hit for her para partner at some point, or if you want to focus some time on feeding her more kills so she gets to rally strength faster. I think that's just a more pleasant experience if she's gotten a little bit of extra stat growth built in. But certainly if you're going with the maid path, you don't want 10-1. That's not going to work.
Oh, that's interesting. I never really thought about it that way. I guess it makes sense, though.
But even if you are going with maid, I wouldn't say Charlotte is actually very good at that. You might see the allure of, say, promoting to hero, going for soul, then class changing to mid after that. But Charlotte has basically exactly the wrong stat spread to make that work well, because she has a ton of HP and horrific defensive stats. And what you want on a life-stealing tank is enough HP to work, and then as much physical defense and resistance as you possibly can. You want to cut enemy damage so that your healing is as effective as possible, not take big hits and then try to heal back a ton of damage that you're taking.
You want to lifesteal a high percentage of HP, basically, right? A high percentage of your own HP.
Yeah, you want to.
The res especially.
You want to
so
minimize,
trash.
and you want to minimize the amount of the damage you're taking, because that makes your lifesteal a lot more efficient. So you can do it. You can make it work. She's going to need some significant help with bulk. It's a fun way to play. Can't really recommend it as a great option, though.
All right, I'm going to try that next time I play Conquest. It seems hilarious. Especially, I didn't even think about the soul part, but I guess it would really suck that you need to get out of bronze daggers before you can use soul at all, right?
You do, yeah.
Sounds slightly miserable, but hey, you can probably kill the entire Kitsune layer with that if you get it online, and you get enough bulk stacking, I guess.
They might be hitting you for like 15 damage at a pop, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess he's proc soul
At
every
least.
hit. He'll be fine. I guess maybe it's also an issue that if she does too much damage, she might just get soul in the second hit where she does like 10 damage to finish the enemy off, and she just doesn't help her survive.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of comes out in the wash, but it's true that you're going to have less variance in terms of the amount of HP you get back if you're exactly two-shotting enemies than if you're hitting big once and then small the second time.
It's like how Odin wants to roughly two-shot enemies with Nosferatu if he can. Like, we get as close to 50% as he can when he's attacking.
Although it like on average, soul will work the same either way. Whereas with Nosferatu, like, since it's a guaranteed activation, you just always want to hit for exactly half if you possibly can.
Oh, good point. Good point. So, I don't know. The feeling I get from Charlotte is that if you leave out her abilities to fight by herself for a minute, that's already much better than what all the units in the C tier are doing. It feels like, and on top of that, she has some potential on her own. So I feel like we could reasonably slide her into B tier somewhere.
Yeah, I think so. I think if I were picking, I would say she's in the neighborhood of Effie. I could see putting her ahead or behind, depending on how much you value Effie's early game contributions. I guess theoretically you could make Effie your, fighter as well.
Oh yeah,
funny. We didn't even talk about that, but
yeah, I think you mentioned Berserker Effie really briefly, so it's on the record. Don't worry.
Okay. So yeah, I think somewhere around there works.
All right,
is about appropriate for her.
I'm sure she's ahead of Mozu at the very least. I'm not sure about Effie.
Yeah, and again, she is like a more min-maxed version of Arthur, especially when it comes to the para bonuses, where she's just offers a little bit more strength and those extra points of speed that are nice. But she is less available, and I think that counts for something.
Yeah, for sure. Arthur's Paraps is huge up until that point. Whereas, I mean, Charlotte has more min-max bonuses, but at the same time, when she is around, you also have other options that are maybe not as good, but nearly as good. So if you had to leave out one of the two, you probably prefer leaving out Charlotte. Yeah.
And I do find a lot of the time, moving into the second half of the game, like, yeah, Charlotte's, 8 strength and 5 speed, theoretically, is pretty awesome, but in many cases, you look at a situation, you think, well, I'd rather have a Wyvern Lord pair up so I could get extra defense and mobility, or I'd rather have someone who gives me even more speed, or the strength isn't really that important to me. I want, as long as I'm getting speed from anything, that'll do it for me, which is a common experience with Xander, actually.
Yeah. I was going to bring that up too, because I was talking to Gwimp about Xander pair up option. I was like, yeah, Charlotte is the main one. He's like, no, I always do Selena instead, because I'd rather have more hit for Siegfried. Or maybe he wants to fly around like with a Wyvern, like you said. Or the lack of mobility on Berserker. Or if it's not Xander, but someone else, maybe they'll want more bulk. And I don't think Charlotte gives any bulk, right? Just strength and speed, and that's
Correct. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you just want a unit that just needs offense, then I guess Charlotte's the best, but that's not always what you need.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else on Charlotte?
I guess I mentioned that she is a surprisingly powerful mom just for passing big strength growth and HP +5. Her defensive stats are bad, but just handing down HP +5 to someone can get them off to a good start.
Yeah, is that what kids need the most? I mean, a little bit ahead of schedule maybe, but is that what kids want the most is some HP? Because everyone just has really bad HP in this game.
Not always. I just wanted to mention that HP +5 is a surprisingly powerful inheritance. Sometimes you don't need to worry about the really late game skills and like go for a trample before you get kids or anything. Sometimes just simply passing a bunch of HP is really solid.
Yeah, I guess it also depends on which kid and which paralog and how we're delaying it, of course.
Yep.
But yeah, makes sense. Keaton then, never used this unit in my life other than as a strength parabot. I know he kills his fellow beasts and they kill him really hard, which I always found very funny. I noticed that he's effective on Pegasus Knights as well because he kills beasts, so that's really nice in his joining chapter. And he seems fairly bulky, not fast enough to double consistently. But this is definitely one of the units I need to try out in my next playthrough because I have next to no experience with him, but he seems really fun to use, and whenever you pair him with someone, they tend to destroy everything. So, I don't know what. Keaton. I don't know anything about Keaton. What do you know about Keaton?
I like him a lot. As a pair-up partner, like you said, if you pair him with people, they tend to destroy everything. That's pretty true. Wolfskin and then Wolfsegner have really nice pair-up bonuses. They're like a version of Fighter and Berserker with one less strength and one more speed by default. And the extra speed is surprisingly useful. There's lots of places where having +4 strength, +4 speed, even with no support bonuses whatsoever, hits some really nice thresholds. So that's sort of notable in and of itself. And yeah, Keaton has some serious limitations as a combat unit, obviously, because he only ever has one range weapons in Wolfskin. He's okay at using them, but he's not. They do give him some flexibility because the Beast Stone gives him extra speed and it makes up for his rather lacking skill because it has an extra skill bonus and higher hit. The Beast Rune accentuates his bulk, which is pretty decent. Keaton has very good HP and pretty good defense as well. And he's fairly strong. He's not especially fast and his skill is awful, but you can put those features to work with his base class. And they do have some applications. I actually really like the fact that when he gets into Wolfsegner and gets to level 5, he learns Better Odds, which recovers 40% of his HP every other turn. It's not huge, and obviously you can make up for those HP losses with just staff support if you have to, but it feels nice to be able to walk around and use his good bulk and the good stats he has in Wolfsegner and dish out big physical hits and not take a ton of damage and heal it off.
It's like having renewal, right? Basically.
Yeah, it's no, I misspoke about this at one point when I was discussing renewal in a previous video of mine, but let me double check now. I forget if it's 30% or 20% in this game.
What, renewal?
Yeah.
Because Better Odds is 40 and renewal is 30.
It is 30 still. Okay. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, because I was thinking, I remember saying at one point, I think it was in my video when Keaton joined or something. No, it was the Ophelia chapter, where I said, "Oh, Better Odds is like renewal, but it heals twice as much every other turn," and that's not actually true. But still, 40% is a fairly substantial chunk. It's not as good as getting 30% every turn, but it's very nice.
Yeah, and renewal is kind of hard to access in this game anyway.
Yeah. But all that said, it's bad to be a one range locked unit, for sure. And you don't get as much use out of the Beastbane skill as you might hope, really. He does get to use it in his join chapter against the Sky Knights. But he's not very good at using it in the chapter that's filled with beasts because he's not very accurate. They're very evasive. And they're pretty threatening to him because they also have effectiveness on him, or semi-effectiveness. It's Beastbane is 2 times might. So he, like for example, the Beast Stone, which has 6 might, I believe, becomes 12. Plus 6 damage is fine. But it's not like spectacular. It's not like the Beast Killer going from 10 to 30. And then beyond that, like chapter 20, yeah, he can fight Falcon Knights there, but they tend to be mixed in with a whole bunch of great masters and Onryoji and stuff, and he's just not very good at handling those.
Yeah, or you have to deal with Kinchis, which attack him from range, which, I mean, he doesn't die in one hit probably, but he doesn't get to counter them. And then
Yeah.
24 probably is the same problem, right, with bolt knocking out the enemies.
Yeah.
And then the Beast Killer Generals, I remember there's a lot of those in Iago chapter 26.
Yep. Yeah, he loses out on opportunities to really contribute in combat pretty quickly. He can reclass. He does get Fighter as his Heartsfield class. He can actually inherit Knight from Benny or Mercenary from Laszlo. And I think that's everyone. And he has all the standard first-gen female marriage options. But his problem with that is basically just that it costs you a resource, and without the benefit of his stones and the bases and growths of the Wolfskin class, Keaton's stats are not spectacular. Like his HP is good, his defense is good, but for example, at the same level, he's going to be outcompeted by Charlotte as a fighter fairly handily. As a Wyvern rider, like marrying Baruka or Camilla, I mean, we've discussed this to death, but there are just better ways to get people into that faster who can do it better than he can. So I like using Keaton. I think he's very helpful, but he is sort of, in practice, locked to just one thing that he does very well. And that is being a great pair-up bot. So I consider him better than Charlotte, mainly because of that extra speed that he gives right off the bat. But I wouldn't say he's significantly better than her. It's just kind of just a different flavor, arriving at about the same point in the game.
Middle Charlotte, basically.
Yeah, he doesn't have rallies, but he is actually better at fighting stuff straight up if he has to when he joins. So that's something.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I expect him then to below Charlotte the way you were speaking, but I can definitely see that. That's fair. I mean, like I said, I have no practical experience to defer to besides like 3 sentences I said at the start of a segment, so I'll just throw him above Charlotte for now. Makes sense to me, and definitely looking forward to trying him out as a combat unit because he seems like one of those units that's like not great, but at least fun to use. Not like Nyx where it just feels painful, but just good when he gets going.
He's limited, but he feels good, which is always nice.
Good unit feel. There you go.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Anything else on Keaton?
I like that he gives rally strength to Laszlo. That's cool.
In a very roundabout way. Neither of them are fighters, but somehow rally strength comes out.
Yep.
Okay. Gunter, a unit that I have used a little bit, but I've mostly seen him do stuff in playthroughs. I'm going to give a shout out to Karma's Negative Growth playthrough, which is carried half by Camilla and the other half by Gunter, basically. Negative Growth is where Gunter obviously looks very, very different from Vanilla because, or rather, he's the one that looks the least different because his growths are just so bad. I think I looked him up and he has like 5% HP growth or something, or 5% speed growth, which is just hilarious to me. Maybe it was 15. Where's his Veil thing? Doesn't matter. He has really low speed growth, which I found very funny. His bases seem...
I don't think he has a single growth over 25% except maybe HP.
Yeah, it's so bad. But in a vanilla context or like a 0% context, he looks like usable at the very least and really good if you feed resources into him. So I'm always a little bit disappointed when I get Gunter and I've seen those videos. I'm like, oh yeah, Gunter. And look at his combat forecast in most chapters. I'm like, that's pretty meh. But I can see that for a unit that you don't really invest anything into. For chapter 15 onwards, at least he brings a lot of stuff still to the table. He's a really good pair bot for Corrin because of his personal. I think it's +3 damage dealt and +15 hit for Corrin, which is good. I don't think Corrin always wants that, but I think a lot of the time Corrin does want that. You do have like servants that give different bonuses that you might want on Corrin, but a lot of the time, like when you're fighting Takumi, for example, I feel like that damage threshold reaching is very helpful. And +15 hit is nice if Corrin is not having 100% hit normally. And in his own right, Gunter has access to some of the best classes in the game. Great Knight is fine to be, but then he has Wyvern and like Rally Defense if he wants to get it from that. I think he has Hero if you want to make Gunter fight stuff with Soul. Just a lot of good stuff going on there. It's just his base speed is so trash. And then, of course, before I forget, he also exists in the early game in Branch of Fate when you have very few options, and so he just gets some brownie points for being around there and helping out until he falls off a bridge. I feel like Branch of Fate counts for unit utility in this list. I think we've been consistent about that, so I feel like that should be mentioned. Chapter 15 onwards, I don't feel it's like massively great, but for no cost, you can do some good things, and then with some heart seals, you can do more things. So, yeah, my feeling is that he's like at least significantly better than the C tiers at the very least. He seems like a helpful guy to have around. So, yeah, what's up with Gunter?
I think he deserves one more a mention of one more special feature he has, which is not quite on the same level as the servants, but he does have a higher level cap and faster experience gain. Gunter, I believe, has an internal level of 5 and can level up to 30. So when he joins back, he returns at level 15, right? So he gains experience like a level 20 unit.
Yeah, when I look him up on Veil, it says he's level 10.
No, he returns at level 10, right? Yeah, so he gains experience like a level 15 unit, which is actually fairly impressive for his join time. Now, the catch is he's not really going to gain stats with that low level so much because his growths are awful, but that does make it very easy for him to go pick up a lot of skills very quickly. And it's very feasible for him to get the level 15 skills in particular. So what he can get out of his base class in Great Knight, that's not that impressive. All he's really waiting for is Armored Blow, which is okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's already got all the good stuff from that class anyway, like Elbow Room, Shelter.
Yeah, but if you're able to spare a Heart Seal, then he can get, for example, I think the classic choice is going to Wyvern Lord, get Rally Defense, get Lunge, Strength +2, Swordbreaker for what that's worth. You could, in theory, make him a Malignite instead and go for Trample. If you really wanted to focus on maximizing Gunter's attack power, I guess that's a real option. It also, I mean, you would think that would be perhaps his best class to support a magical Corrin, but actually I think Bow Knight is better. So if you've got a Malignite Corrin, for example, you don't really need flight support at all, but you would really like speed and movement and the extra damage from his personal skill and a ton of accuracy between the +15 hit and the skill bonuses. Because that makes, for example, the Bolt Axe becomes a lot more viable when you've got Gunter backing you up. And Gunter's, he's got great utility. So he can do that stuff to support Corrin, or with, for say, the Wyvern Lord path. Now he's a flying rally defense user who also has shelter. And that's something that it's not that easy to come by. We discussed before that Xander can do that for sure. And in fact, you probably want him to do that. Silas can do that if you go into Wyvern Lord. It's possible to take some of the other Wyverns in the game and go through Cavalier first. But Gunter being able to do that with just one Heart Seal and get Rally Defense really quickly is a pretty nice feature. So it's sort of similar to the situation with the Servants, where I think probably the best thing you can do with them is spend a Heart Seal in the mid-game and move Gunter into a support-oriented role where he has the combination of some kind of team utility with a rally, either rally defense or rally skill, and the ability to be a great pair-up bot for Corrin at the same time.
Yeah, so very similar situation to Servant 2, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, they basically joined at the same time, so I guess they would end up similarly. I don't remember if we agreed on like a position for Servant 2 if they were on the list, because we combined Jacob and Felicia just
I
into
think
A.
not precisely. To me, like Gunter and Arthur are like not at all the same unit, but it feels like they have the same kind of function, where Gunter is a lot more specialized, but he also has much better access to those utility functions. Like Arthur is basically just going for rally strength unless you really go out of your way to work on Niall's friendship and stuff. But Gunter has really fast access to flying, shelter, rally utility. He's probably the best pair-up bot for Corrin. And if your Corrin is one of your main combat units, that's going to be very important to your run. So he does disappear for a while, but I think in most runs, it's going to be a great idea to deploy Gunter on every map after he comes back. And that, I think, says something about him.
Yeah. So are you saying he should be around Arthur's position then? Like,
that's
right
about
above
where
him?
I'd put him. Yeah. Like I definitely don't think, like, even though he is a great support unit, I don't think that merits A tier by itself, but I think he's a very good B tier style unit.
Yeah, the thing with the A tier is that all the units besides Leo have like way more availability than Gunter does, even though Gunter exists for a couple Branch of Fates maps. So it's kind of hard to say he's on the same level as, I don't know, Odin or Selena when they're around for so much longer. Even though they take some time to build up to become really good. Like, do you think Gunter has legit prospects as a combat unit, or is this just based on his support?
Not really. You can make it happen. He does have really nice weapon ranks and like okay starting strength and stuff.
Yeah.
And really good skill actually, which is more helpful than you might expect.
Yeah, 24 in Great Knight is insane.
Yeah. And that's, I think, very well designed to make him a super accurate supporting guy. But he's never really going to get to a situation where he's outright killing stuff by himself. And I think you're better off just focusing on what he can do in terms of utility.
Yeah, just enable someone else to do the killing and leave the 10 speed guy to do dual strikes every now and then.
Yeah.
Alright, throw him above Arthur. Or no, because I don't know. Intuitively, it feels like he's better, but maybe that's just because he has a bigger impact later in the game. But Arthur is around for so much longer that I think it can go either way.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. Anything else for Gunter?
I think that about covers it.
Yeah, sure enough. I mean, all these units so far, I don't think we said this during the camera, but we thought most of these would be fairly short-ish because first of all, they're not around for nearly as long. Their paths are not as complex, and they can generally be summarized to like one or two phrases that are just like their whole utility. I think you said after recording last time, it's like Parabot, Strength Parabot, Corrin Parabot. That's it.
Yeah.
All right. In that case, let's move on to Shura. So the first thing we definitely have to get out of the way is Shura versus Boots. We discussed this at length, and I think the conclusion was Shura should not be punished for being an alternative to the Boots. Like, we're not going to put him in a low tier just because you could get the Boots instead of Shura. It is probably worth addressing that, yeah, technically you could get +1 move by recruiting Shura instead of getting the Boots, but you can also get +1 move from a lot of other pair-up classes like Ninja or Cavalier or Wyvern, anything. Whereas if you give someone Boots and then give them a +1 pair-up, you have 2 move, whereas with Shura you can only get 1. So I guess for the purposes of this playthrough or this context, we're just not getting Boots, we're recruiting everyone, just everyone is assumed to be recruited. But I think you said that if we did count the Boots against Shura, he'd be like here, right?
Yeah.
He'd be the yeah, but he's not going to be there.
Yeah. And I do want to clarify that, like, I don't think Boots are essential to success in this game. There's plenty of movement tools. You can make things happen without them. But they are really nice, and they're going to be a lot more helpful to you than Shura will be if you know how to use them.
Yeah.
I think the one amendment I want to add on the agreement to like not count the loss of Boots against him is I don't think Shura's movement +1 skill counts because like
the skill or the para bonus he gives?
the skill that he has that gives him
Oh,
extra
absolutely,
movement.
absolutely.
Because if you just don't get Shura, like you could say, oh, Shura's like a 7 movement Master Ninja or something, but basically any other Master Ninja, you could just give them the boots and do the same thing without costing a skill slot. So,
Absolutely.
like, I don't think that works in his favor.
Yeah.
In terms of evaluating what he does.
No, the argument I've seen is that you can that pairing Shura into someone is like giving them the boots, but that, like I just explained, is not really a thing.
And yeah, as you mentioned, like in that respect, you can stack the movement para bonus and the boots. So there is something more you can do with the boots than you can with just having a +1 movement para partner.
Yeah, of course, there are things that Shura can do that a pair of boots cannot by itself. The pair of boots would have to go in another competent unit to deliver what Shura does. And I know from experience that there are some things that Shura can do that feel fairly good. The one example I've seen is that at base, I think he could just do funny double the Master Ninja guys in the Ninja Cave as in his base class. He has like a ton of different classes he has access to that I found really funny. Can you clarify? I think the way it works is that pre-promotes have access to 2 whole class trees, even if they are really just 1 promoted unit. Then core and sexuals get an extra tree, right? Like Shura does.
Yeah. So the core and sexuals have their base class and then 2 Heart Seal class trees, whereas everyone else has just 1 Heart Seal class tree.
Yeah.
And that's basically to make up for the fact that they don't really get friendship options. A couple of them do, but it's like maybe 1 or 2.
Yeah, because Corrin doesn't give out a friendship class, does he? Or do they?
Correct.
Yeah.
You can't get a class from Corrin unless you marry them.
Yeah. So Shura has Outlaw, Ninja, and Fighter trees, all of which have some really funny and really good options. I like Bow Knight as an idea. I like Master Ninja, but you'd have to build up the Shuriken rank. Berserker, I don't feel like we've ever really said Berserker is optimal for anyone who's kind of forced to go into one, but it has really strength theoretically, I guess. Adventurer, like his base class is fine. Hero has Soul, I guess. I feel like he's not the best option for any of these, but individually they're all decent options if you're looking to fill that gap. Now, if you've already trained someone who is capable of doing this class but better, main examples I think would be Niles, Selena, maybe Mozu, then it feels a little bit pointless to use Shura because they're kind of specialist kind of classes. Like I said, you can have Shura do chapter 17 and fight ninjas behind a wall and one-round them with a bow, and that's good. But if you already had someone capable of doing that, then maybe you were better off taking the boots, which you're not penalizing him for it, but basically saying Shura is not adding a whole lot to the team if you're doing that. And I feel like those kind of examples are all over the place. He can do a lot of things, but he's not the only one who can do them, and he's not always the best option. So that's why I expect to end Shura fairly low, even though he seems like he is competent, is the way I feel about him. Is that how you feel as well?
Yeah, it is. The classic thing that Shura can do is go into chapter 17 and just crush everything with, even in his base class. He does take a little bit of support. You need to give him some extra strength and speed because his base stats alone won't do it, but it's fairly minimal. And then you can do the whole archer behind the walls, shoot all the master ninjas, kill everything. That whole routine is great. You probably do want to give him a forged bronze bow because even though his stats are fine, his accuracy does need help. Just like basically every bow unit, you just want to be as accurate as you possibly can be there. And I do like sticking with Adventurer for a little while and taking advantage of chapter 17 to get Shura to level 5 in Adventurer, because then he can get Lucky 7. And I think if you're asking what Shura's value proposition is, I do think getting Lucky 7 quickly and then transferring to some other class is probably his best claim to fame. Because that combination is not something that's readily accessible to a lot of berserkers or master ninjas or mechanists. It's not easy to go take a detour through outlaw for most characters. And it is nice. And he does, like I said, like in comparisons with other units, I'm not really factoring in movement +1, but he is a relatively high mobility version of a Master Ninja or a Mechanist or even a Bow Knight, if you want to go that route. But also, like you said, if you really dig into how the stat thresholds work, you start to discover that Shura doesn't really do anything special. You mentioned a bunch of people who can do the whole bow thing, and I think maybe the highlight of that is the fact that Selena can do what Shura does with just a promotion to Bow Knight, and that's it. She's going to need like Keaton pair up and Inspiring Song and tonics and stuff, but she can hit the speed thresholds and the attack thresholds to clear out the Master Ninjas too. So, and then, for example, with someone like Mozu, since her growths are so much better than Shura's, what you'll find is that if you take Mozu to about level 15 and then take her into and then promote her and put her in Sniper, she's going to be competitive with Shura's stats already, despite being at a lower level and growing faster and getting, support bonuses from other characters along the way and passing her class around and everything you can do with that Shura can't really do.
Yeah, that sounds like the threshold to hit that chapter 17 1-run threshold is probably really low then, because I just checked Selena's stats like for just to double check. Selena loses to Shura by 5 strength and 6 speed, but she's still able to do it. That's insane.
Yep. Yeah, because she has what, 18 speed in Bow Knight?
Yes, and
13 strength. Yeah,
Shura has
and you need
11.
Speed. You need 29 speed, and 11 is just like basically right on that threshold of what you can reliably get without too much extra effort, because that's 4 from Wolfsegner Keaton, 3 from Missoura, 1 from Laszlo, 2 from Tonic, and then if you can get 1 speed from Emil, or if you've leveled up speed at all, you're there.
Oh, it's nice that you don't need rally speed, because you don't always have that at that point.
Yeah, rally speed's kind of a pain to have at that point, but you can get 11 or 12 from other stuff without too much hassle, which is actually kind of astonishing to think about. Like, even basically 10 chapters into the route, you're already able to stack that amount of speed fairly reliably.
Yeah, for sure. It's a shame that Shura can't have Lucky 7 like right before, because that would be a nice advantage over people like Selena.
It would be so nice, actually.
I guess you could do a paralog to do it.
You could. I don't think there are a lot of paralogs available at that point where an adventure is going to shine. Maybe Nina's. Although a lot of the bow units in that paralog are non-hostile, so that's annoying. And they're kind of spread out. I think in practice, the best place to feed those levels to Shura is Chapter 17. You just kind of wish he also had it there, if at all possible.
Yeah, or that he has better growth. Like, it's only really good growth is speed and res at 55 each in adventure, and strength is 30.
Yeah, the rest are pretty low. Like, they're not Gunter horrible, but they're subpar for sure.
Yeah, does that make him like significantly worse than other people in late game as well?
I would say so. Again, this is a game where you can patch up basically anyone's stats to an absurd degree, but you don't want to have to do that for everyone all the time. And a lot of other characters are going to be basically competitive with Shura's stats, even though his base stats look great on paper. There's a lot of other units who are going to be basically competitive with him when he joins, in whatever role he's looking for, and they're going to surpass him as they go deeper in the game. So I know another big recommendation that people make a lot is taking Shura into Master Ninja or Mechanist. And that's another case where, looking at him against Kaze, for example, he's going to be stronger in terms of raw strength, and I think he's going to have maybe slightly better physical defense, but they're going to be roughly tied in HP. Kaze's going to have a lot better resistance. He's going to be a lot faster. And Kaze really makes up most or all the difference in strength with the fact that he has probably B rank in daggers by that point, and Shura has E.
Yeah, and I feel like Kaze's speed is so overkill that, well, Shura probably needs to well, the difference isn't that big. Base Shura is 25 in Master Ninja, while Kaze is 27 at 15.5. So I guess the difference isn't that big in speed.
That does make Kaze a lower level than him. Base Shura versus 15.5. Yeah.
Yeah. That's roughly the same HP, I think.
Exactly the same. Yeah.
I don't know if that like underestimates Kaze's level or anything. I feel like that's about on par.
No, I think that's roughly appropriate. But yeah, like the more you dig into the thresholds, you're like, oh, sure has great stats on paper, but then you just like look at what he can actually do and what other people can actually do, and you realize, it's not that impressive. And you know, he doesn't support people, which isn't a horrible thing. Like there are other great units in this game that don't really have good support options, but it just feels kind of bad, and it just means that like you'd want him to stand out more and like really do something amazing that no one else can replicate, and he just really can't. So I find that really disappointing. Like he's not bad, but he just doesn't succeed as wildly as you might hope. And his prospects after Chapter 17 are not that good. He can certainly work in Chapter 18, especially if you go, say, with the ninja route. He can do the sorcerer room. Chapter 19, he's pretty terrible. He just doesn't have the physical bulk yet to handle that very well. He does have the Soul Master Ninja option, but it's not notably better than someone like Laszlo, who himself is only okay at it. He'd be going through the fighter version of Hero and getting HP plus 5 instead of Strong Riposte, which has its advantages and disadvantages. The extra HP is nice, but I don't know, a lot of times I'd prefer the extra damage. Berserker is an option, but it's mostly just for rally support, and it's easier and cheaper to get that on someone like Charlotte or Arthur instead. And even if you're looking at the ninja, like going straight to Master Ninja, for example, which is something he can also do. You can just go straight to Master Ninja in Chapter 17 and use that to work on his dagger rank. The fact that you can capture a Master Ninja there who himself has movement plus 1 is kind of a drag, especially because that movement plus 1 really should count, because you could trade in Shura for the boots and give that guy 8 movement, which is that worth it? Yeah, I don't know, but
it's just really
like
funny.
I don't see what Shura's bringing to the table in that respect anymore.
In a way, it's kind of like with Laszlo, where he's like the only unit in the game that can't use this bonus of plus
yeah.
move.
Yeah, kind of a shame. He does sort of make up for it for himself with having movement plus 1, but if he runs into comparisons against people who themselves have that skill, that's kind of a problem for him.
Yeah, if you do something goofy like movement plus 1 on Arthur, then yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely think he's a step down even from the likes of, like, he's not hugely worse, but I think he's a step down even from Mozu. He's just, like, at the core thing that Shura's meant to help you do, which is just be a strong bow unit who can help you in Chapter 17, the chapter right after he joins. He's pretty handily outcompeted by a bunch of people, including Mozu, who have better long-term prospects and I think are more important to use and to keep using. So
yeah, I agree.
He kind of falls into that perfectly adequate tier, but I don't see what some people do in Shura. I don't think he's nearly as good as some of his fans.
Yeah,
think.
If you just look at his battle forecasts, I can see why some people consider him high. I think my old list even had him at B tier. I'd have to double check him because I did use him and I was impressed by what he did. But that was before I figured out that other people could just replicate it. It feels like it's a unit that has his place in teams that have like a ninja-shaped hole in their team, or like a fast bow kind of team, because then he can make up for that problem. So if you build your team in advance, you're probably never including Shura. But if you do like a draft or something, then there's probably some kind of niche that Shura can fulfill that the rest of your team might not be able to.
Yeah, and that's really what he's for. Like, if you're missing a good bow unit, then don't kill Shura. Bring him. He's good. If you need you've neglected your 2 thief type characters, and you need someone to bring Lock Touch who can also help out in a fight, get Shura. He's great at that. But if you've got that covered, he's not going to elevate your team.
He brings your team to a minimum of competency, but if you've already reached it, then he doesn't heighten the ceiling, I guess is a way I could phrase it. So for all his shortcomings, I do feel like the things that he can do make him arguably better than all the units in C tier, though. I do agree he's lower than B tier, but I wouldn't put him in D, and I think he's like perfectly fine for C somewhere.
Yeah, I would definitely call him better than what's in C right now. And maybe this is something we revisit later, because I don't know exactly where we want to set the boundary between B and C. Like, I think there is a substantial gap right now between what Mozu does and what Perry does, but spoilers, I'm going to argue that basically all of these 3 units should be roughly in that gap, and I don't know exactly where the cutoff should be.
That's fair. I think I'll throw him in at the top of C for now then, and then we'll see how that resolves itself. Flora then?
All right, Flora.
Okay. I had Flora for this Soyo draft, and I've barely been able to use her more than I already have, which is not a whole lot. I just know Staff Bot and not a lot else. She was one of the 6 units I reclassed to Strategist over the course of the run, which is a funny coincidence. But yeah, I think the only time we really brought up Flora in this series before was when we talked about Kaze being able to do a thing in Chapter 20, and then Flora could technically replicate that because Flora's notably bad speed makes her technically worse, but still capable of doing it with enough stat stacking. So I guess that says a lot about what she's like as a unit. It was nice to have a unit with a high staff rank at base, but the lack of availability and a lack of supports in this game really hurt. I think that's really the core of what makes a unit like Shura quote-unquote bad too, is they just don't have a chance to build up utility over the course of the game, nor build up supports, and provide something for most of the game and get into a late game class that's super helpful. So you just get a staff bot with like access to rally resistance maybe, and not a whole lot else. So yeah, I wasn't able to get much out of Flora, but the couple times I was able to do something with her, like silence the hexing rod made in Chapter 26, they were nice, but I think I agree that she kind of belongs in that maybe upper echelon of C tier. What do you think?
I know the classic canard about Flora is, well, she's worse than a generic maid that you can capture.
I've heard that, yeah.
Similar to the way I just basically argued that like Ninja Shura is worse than a Master Ninja you can capture in Chapter 17. And that's true in one very specific sense, which is at base, the Chapter 18 maids that you can capture are going to have slightly better staff hit for their offensive staves than Flora will. They have worse stats than her generally, but they have S rank, at least on Lunatic mode when you capture them in staves. And Flora only has B rank if you recruit her as early as possible, which is right after Chapter 18. So that's technically true. I do think that's really unfair to Flora because the difference is like 1 or 2 points of staff hit, which barely matters. And beyond that, like Flora is way better at actually fighting things than those generic maids are. Because as we discussed with the Kaze things, like she basically has Kaze stats, but with just half the speed when she joins. Like, is that amazing? No. But is it workable? Yes. But I don't think she gets a lot of mileage out of her reclass options. Because what she has is Mercenary, and which is similar to Felicia, and then also Dark Mage. And I think what Flora's most notable selling point is the fact that she has staff access. She comes with B rank, which is like the last important staff rank in the game, because that gives you access to Entrap. The next ranks only give you Fortify at A, which I've never used, ever. And Bifrost at S rank, which I've also pretty sure I've never used except to like test how it works. And disappointingly, it does not refresh a unit. You can't even go send someone on a suicide attack and then revive them and then instantly have them attack again.
Or they come in like cool. Grayed out.
Yeah, they do. It's very sad.
They thought of everything.
So yeah, B rank's the last one that's important. Flora has it. If you're playing at a relatively fast pace, it's fairly unlikely that you're going to get B staff rank on anyone else except probably the first servant and potentially a late game child who you recruit like in one of the last chapters when they're staff, like that would be specifically Forrest and Dwyer, who start in the staff class, start as troubadours. They can get B rank in staves by end game as well. But it's tedious and ineffective to grind staff rank on just about anyone else. So just having free asterisk B rank staves with Flora it's a nice thing to have. And I think just as a representation of what offensive staff use is in this game, I think it's not spectacular, but I think it's worth something that she could be your entrapper. And her high skill really helps with that.
Yeah, and there's like 2 important spots to use Entrap on, right? On Hans and on that general that's in the Wayne endgame. And that alone is worth a team slot at the very least.
Yeah, it certainly can be.
Then there's just moments where there's like one enemy that's giving you trouble, you can freeze him or enfeeble him to lower their stat threshold for one unit. That's good free stuff.
For sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can be worth bringing in a variety of different places through the rest of the game. And freeze is cheap and relatively spammable, so I know I always try not to use offensive staves if I can avoid it.
Yep.
And usually there are alternatives, but sometimes they are just the best and easiest thing to do. And if you get yourself in trouble at some point, a lot of times a freeze staff used judiciously can bail you out. So that's nice.
Yeah, or just increase your reliability because it reduces the enemy avoid as well, which is something I always forget. I feel like I use half of my turns in Conquest, or half of the time I spend figuring out a turn in Conquest to find a working strategy, and the other half to figure out how to minimize my resource uses doing it. With like, okay, I could do this, but now let me see if I can do it without the freeze, for example, like you said.
Yep. One notable thing that Flora can do support-wise is she does support Felicia. Unfortunately, she doesn't support Jacob, which I think would be cool and somewhat lore relevant. But she does support Felicia, and she gives Felicia Dark Mage access, which isn't that important by itself, because as we discussed before, like the servants don't really have great growths, and you're not really looking for them to be like an amazing sorcerer or dark knight or anything like that. But if you are going all in on Felicia strats and marrying Corin to Felicia and giving her Wyvern, for example, then having Dark Mage access through Flora on top of that is pretty useful, because it gives her the classic things you want from Dark Mage: Heartseeker, Malefic Aura, and in Felicia's case, with that kind of build, also Bowbreaker is pretty notable.
Oh yeah, she's part of the whole get all the breakers on Felicia package.
Yeah, can be. So that's cool. I don't think it's particularly important, but it's something worth noting.
Yeah, in an absence of other things worth noting about a unit. Seems reasonable.
You could put it that way. That's where I think it's hard to draw the line between the B and C tiers for me, because I think her offensive staff utility is, to be fair, fairly generic and replaceable. But it is important, and she lets you have that for almost free without having to do any staff grinding.
You say almost free because you have to build the Fire Orb, or?
You have to build the Fire Orb and raise it to rank 3. So that's 3 Dragonbane points, which is not a huge cost in a run where you are recruiting some kids along the way. But if you're not doing that and you're trying to upgrade, so you're not doing as many chapters and you're trying to upgrade some of the buildings along the way to improve your resource economy, like maybe you're trying to raise up the arena and your mine and your farm or whatever it is, and the lottery shop and stuff like that, it can be a burden.
Oh, that's fair. My last run I had 99 resources and I didn't want to do any Maya Castle stuff, so I had like way too many Dragon Vein points. But thinking about it, yeah, that's probably the upper end of resource availability. Like, I can see how it gets constrained when you have to build that and all the other things you mentioned.
Yeah, like if you're going straight through the main chapters and you're not even doing invasions and stuff, spending 3 Dragon Vein points to raise to improve the Fire Orb is going to be a problem. But I think in a normal playthrough, you can work around it just fine.
Yeah, especially because Invasion 1 is like 5 minutes of work anyway, so even if you didn't need it for anything, it takes like 2 seconds to beat it with late game units. Like 1 point.
Yeah. You do have the option to delay Flora's recruitment by not building the level 3 Fire Orb for a while. I don't really see the point in holding off on it, except insofar as you have to save up Dragon Vein points for it. So if you need to buy other things first, then okay. But I don't think you get a significant advantage by waiting 4 or 5 chapters to get Flora later. She will be at a higher level with slightly more weapon experience after a point, although I think it takes a while for the scaling on her staff rank to actually get beyond her base, if I remember correctly. So she doesn't start getting more staff experience for a while.
That's fine. I'm assuming it also like slightly improve her stats every time because she gets auto levels. But
yeah,
it's not like Flora really sees combat optimally.
Yeah. But so I guess it's only fair to say that yes, she can do the anti-mage combat that Kaze does, like we discussed before. The anti-Falcon Knight combat is going to be a lot more troublesome because those are a lot faster and you have to work for that a lot, but you can do it. But in cases where you're fighting especially enemy sorcerers and Dark Knights and stuff like that, she's not going to have that much trouble doubling them, and she does the same things that Kaze does. So, that's something.
Goes on a list of things I want to try, but probably kind of low on that list because it doesn't seem super exciting compared to, say, Maid Charlotte or...
Yeah. Well, she's just a maid automatically. Isn't that exciting?
Yeah, that's true. That's always exciting. That's why I play Fates, to have the maids. Well, we kind of already agreed on going in C tier. I do feel like I think I know what you're going for with the maid utility, the staff utility, especially being something that's necessary. That feels a bit better than Shura to me, in the sense that it's more essential to your playthrough and less likely that you already have it. Because your only viable alternative to get those things is like capture generic maid, basically, right? And
essentially,
and the servant one.
Yeah, and recruit a kid late who has staff rank.
Yeah, and those things I consider the entrap is not the only way to clear either 26 or endgame, but they're pretty good ways to do it, and the alternative is probably a bit more annoying. Like I can see how you can clear endgame in like 1 or 2 turns with, for example, using pass instead of the entrap, but that path seems significantly more convoluted to the point where I think the Flora and trap route seems to deserve a fair amount of credit.
Yeah, I think that's fine. If there's one other place where I think entrap is fairly useful, it's actually chapter 25. Only if you're really trying to play it straight, but especially on the right-hand side, being able to kidnap some of the master ninjas with spy shurikens and beat them up on player phase is pretty nice.
Yeah, and you get 4 entraps total, right, if you just buy them both. So
yes,
you just fair to use this.
Yep.
And if you're doing that, at one time I tried to clear that side of the map. I don't think I thought of using entrap, but I did feel like if I was going to clear it, I ended up giving up. But if I was going to clear it, not just entrap, but also freeze and enfeeble would also be very helpful there as well. All right, fair enough. We'll throw in the upper echelons of CTR. I do think this divide is like difficult, but also splitting hairs to the point where it's not worth worrying over too much. And I can totally see the way it being fine, but we'll see when Izana's on there. Anything else on Flora?
I think that about covers it.
All right. Izana, I used him like once or twice. Rally Luck and Rally Magic at base is really nice. I feel like Rally, those two come from like Hoshiden classes, so they're a little bit tougher to reach in Birthright. And I feel like unless you go out of your way to get him, you're not going to have him when Izana joins. And getting all the rallies can be a little bit tricky. So having this one seems really nice. I think his personal is probably the most interesting one in the game, or one of the most interesting one. All enemies and allies within 2 spaces deal -2 damage, so it hurts you, but it also helps you. I think the way you position Izana is usually going to be like 2 tiles behind your front line, like if you look at, say, chapter 26 or something. And if you already know you're dealing overkill damage, then it's just a free -2 damage taken, which just seems really good. Alternatively, you just rally magic someone and you move them forward so that they don't do -2 damage, because sometimes you do almost exactly hit those 2 kill thresholds. I think skills that are intended to hurt you a little bit or make you think about it are a little bit interesting, or more interesting than just Lamau +3 damage. So I think that's cool. Beyond that, Not a whole lot that I've been able to do with Izana. His combat doesn't seem particularly great. I think he can only join you after chapter 23 is what Vale tells me. Is that right?
Should be before. Wait.
Well, it says chapter 23, so I'm assuming that's before 23, but maybe it's after.
It's before 23.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's not a whole lot of time to do it. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, because it's just barely in time for him to get A rank with Corrin by endgame if you do 23, 24, 25, 26, and Invasion 3.
God. Yeah, it's like one of those units that doesn't support anyone, which we've gone over is just a huge bummer for utility and class X's. I'm not sure if he really has any good prospects in that regard anyway, but it doesn't feel like he does. His base speed is almost as bad as Flora's, but 3 chapters later, so he's got, or several chapters later, he's got 3 more speed than Flora does. The base she has 15, he has 18. His magic is good, his res is good, but he doesn't really have anything else worth noting. And I feel like tomes in general in this game, unless your stats can really back them up, they don't really work well at that point in the game to get kills or even huge dual strikes in. So I find myself just using Rally Luck and Rally Magic on people, and maybe using his personal when I can afford to have him close to the front lines, and I don't need the 2 damage that he takes off. So that's kind of why I expect him to end up in the same part as Flora and Shura. Also because you spoiled it, but also because but also because that's where I feel like he ends up anyway. So anything else on Izana?
Yeah, I think you've basically nailed it there. Rally Luck is surprisingly useful. People don't appreciate the 4 crit avoid and the 4 hit and the 4 avoid. Maybe the hit's most important thing, and then the crit avoid. But they're really nice. I like having them. And Rally, he is the only source of Rally magic that you don't have to go. Or Rally. Okay. He's the only source of Rally Luck that you don't have to go capture someone for or pick Corrin's class for. Technically, you can get Rally Magic without doing either of those things with Nyx Nina. But he's like, I think it's fair to say he's the most accessible version of source of those 2 rallies, and they're fairly important for some of the crazy magic unit strats in this game. Speaking of which, Izana has one of those of his own, because he starts in the Onmyoji, specifically the monk version, and his 2 heart seal classes are Samurai and Apothecary.
Oh.
And that means, no, I don't actually recommend doing this, but that means that he can get Tome Fair, Vantage, Life and Death, and Replicate. So he could replicate himself and then dual strike off of himself throughout the rest of the maps in the game. And just walk Izana and Izana's copy side by side in a tag team and 1.5 shot every single enemy that they face.
Hey, they can't make fun of you for having no supports if you just work with yourself.
Yeah. Like, who needs friends anyway? And that's hilarious.
Wait, does he apply Peacebringer to himself as well?
He does, which is also very funny. So Peacebringer, like, on its own is actually just a boon for Izana by himself, because on his own he does not self-apply it, and it just means all the enemies who attack him deal 2 less damage to him. But yeah, if he's around the rest of the team, you don't necessarily want him to be cutting your own team's damage, although sometimes it doesn't matter. But yeah, if he does the whole dual Vantage attack stance thing with himself, he does cut his own attack with Peacebringer, which is very funny. I did try to theory craft a way for Izana to beat endgame by himself doing this, but I got stuck at one point because, like, he can use silence to help get past a bunch of the enfeebles. In fact, both copies of him can use silence. Again, very funny. But I ran into a wall because I couldn't get past the last wave of reinforcements before I couldn't get all the way down to Akemi and be able to attack him safely in a situation where I wasn't also getting attacked by reinforcements who would eventually break through and kill him.
I really hope
because
so.
there's like warding blow Dark Knights, I think, that he can't kill, or in the reinforcement pool.
They're 50 expected res.
Yeah, and they're a problem. Or maybe they're paladins. I forget which. But anyway, he can almost do it, and that's cool.
I hope that video makes it onto your channel at one point.
If I can figure it out, then sure.
Someone help him figure it out. Please, I need to see this. This is so good.
But that's like maybe the single biggest like novelty build in the whole game is having Izana do that. But it's basically meaningless for this tier list. I think you're right that like the main thing he's going to do is rally luck, rally magic, and it's about like Flora in that that's a useful thing to have. It is replaceable, but he just joins with it. Again, it costs you Dragon Vein points, but they're later in the game because you can only. I mean, you can actually build the level 3 hot springs several chapters early, but he still won't join until right after chapter 22. So, probably by that point you have a few more points to spare, and you can get him. He's not crucial to a run, especially if you're not going for like Vantage Sorcerer strats. Although it is very nice to have him. It's unfortunate that he only has C staff rank when he joins instead of B, because he can't do what Flora can, which I guess is good for Flora's sake. But that means he can use Silence and Freeze. I think he can use Silence. Is Silence C rank or B rank in this game?
Double checking. It's C.
It's C. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
means
'cause I was
there's also a
pretty
lot
sure
of
the
other
only-
people that can reach it probably.
Yeah, I was pretty sure that like the only notable staff at B rank was in Trap. But yeah, I guess I'm right. Because Freeze is B, Silence is C, and Trap is D. Okay, and Trap is B. Okay. So yeah, he can still do some staff utility. You can use Physic if you want that. But he's mostly just going to be a backliner, providing rallies and healing support, and that's, a lot of teams find that very much worth deploying. Some teams don't. You can replace him with other sources if you have to, with captures and stuff.
Is it easy to get a rally luck guy or rally magic guy instead of him with captures?
Well, yes. You could capture a Shrine Maiden as early as Chapter 9, Haitaka's map, or one of the ones behind Tinoka in Chapter 11 also work, and promote them. It's a little bit of a pain to train them up to rally magic rank, or rally level 5, but it's not that hard. And if you do that, you will have it for much more of the game.
Ooh. That is true. I didn't consider that part where you'd have them for like 5 more chapters, if not 10 more chapters, depending on when you do it and how much work you put into it. Because staff grinding is a bit of a pain to get levels on, but at the same time, these people are like 10/1.
Yeah. Although I guess it's notable that they will have B rank in staves already, so that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, that part, you don't have that many B rank staves until much later in the game.
Yeah, it's not important for like what they can do right then. It's just that they don't need more staff uses to get there.
Yeah, I guess they would also make Flora worse by existing.
Slightly, although those Shrine Maidens are miserable at combat, so they don't do what Flora can do in combat if they have to.
Yeah, I feel like Izana's utility is better than Flora's a little bit. This is the feeling I get. But also he's around for another significant portion of the game less. Like the late game maps are just kind of long. So missing, what is it, like Flora joins for 19, right? So that's 19, yes. 20, 21, 22 that he misses.
Yep, she has 4 more maps than him.
That's a
plus
portion.
Whatever paralog you do in between.
Yeah, I feel like after Izana joins, you don't really want to do paralogs anymore. Like, if you have something, if you have something like sequence paralog, you just want to skip it at that point because it's such a pain.
Yeah, I mean, some of the paralogs are really easy to one turn, and I could see doing that. For example, like if you wanted to get Dwyer super late as a staff user who gets free staff ranks, you could wait till basically the very end of the game, and like right before end game, just go do that and recruit him. But honestly, I don't think it's that useful to delay the kids that long. I think if you want to use them, you should get them a little earlier.
Yeah, especially if they're support units. They're waiting to improve their stats doesn't really make a lot much sense. The threshold for kids, and this is getting ahead a little bit again, I feel like is if you're waiting for them, you want to wait for like them to promote to level 5 or level 6 to get the skills.
Yeah, so I don't have any particularly strong opinion about the ordering between Izana and Flora and Shura here. I think whatever feels right is fine. So I'll leave it up to you.
All right.
But I
think
between. Yeah, I think they're all in roughly the same neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. I think the cutoff is fine. I definitely think they should all be in the same tier at least. I don't think any of them deserve to be going up to B tier. I think you said Mozu was like a good in between for B and C tier, and I think you could argue Mozu C tier, but I'm also fairly comfortable with her in B, the way she is right now. It feels a little bit weird to have a gap between Mozu and Flora, but then again, Mozu is just so different from really almost everyone in the game that you can justify her almost anywhere. It feels like, depending on how much you like her. And also on the other end of it, like Shura and Perry are also significantly different, of course, but I don't have super strong opinions on where that should end up either. I think this is all right. I don't see any glaring problems with that part. You said you were on
very.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say there's some very appealing symmetry going on right now, so I like that.
You like the part where Shura's and Perry's portraits are cut off and next to each other? Is that the part you like? The symmetry?
Well, I just like
the tiers. Oh yeah, I see
the tiers.
it, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, we're gonna have to make a kids tier to preserve it.
Yeah, that could be a challenge to keep things balanced with that group, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, because we have to get into kids next. I mean, not to discuss too much because we have a whole meta discussion planned on kids themselves. I think we'll have to take about 2 episodes to go through them all and do that. But like, for the record, you think it's possible to slide them in somewhere, and it makes a reasonable amount of sense, right? Like,
yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do think you have to make some, like, you have to make some fundamental assumptions about how you're playing the game to be able to like have a reasonable discussion about where the kids belong. But if we can agree on some of those points, then I think that you could make a very reasonable tier list out of them.
Great. Well, we'll be leaving that for next time. So look forward to some epic eugenics discussion next time. Zoran, thank you once again for joining me.
My pleasure.
All right, and we'll see you next time for some kids. Bye.
Bye, everyone.